Hey guys, and welcome to Collider Movie Talk for movie fans. I'm your host, Natasha Martinez, and this is the daily show where we give you all the latest news in the world of movies, plus some insight into what it all means. Joining us today is Mark Ellis.
Welcome one and all to the best movie news show in the entire galaxy here at Collider Studios, where good times never seemed so good. On today's show, we have new details from The Last Jedi, possibly new cast for Venom, and if you're under 17 years old, you ain't going to 2049. Natasha, who's joining me today?
Jon Schnepp is joining us today.
It's too bad she won't live, but then again, who does?
Also joining us, Perri Nemiroff.
I am so happy to be back from the Star Trek convention and back on Movie Talk and talking about Star Wars. You hear that, Cody? I'm happy to be talking about Star Wars.
Yay! Also joining us, Clarke Wolfe.
Hello, my friends. Hello. It's good to... Hi.
I love a good Neil Diamond reference, and we got to make this quick because I got to get home and wax Judah's legs. That was for you, Cody. Saving Silverman. Better movie than people give it credit for. All right, Natasha, what is our first story here today?
Okay, Entertainment Weekly yesterday revealed their huge spread of The Last Jedi photos that gave us all new looks at Luke, Rey, Kylo Ren, Finn, Poe, and General Leia. While the photos also showed off new locations like Casino Planet, Canto Bight, new vehicles like Kylo Ren's TIE Silencer and Snoke's samurai-like protectors, the Praetorian Guards, the articles accompanying the images also revealed new plot details we can expect to see in the movie. Perhaps the most interesting came in the article about Rey and Luke, where it revealed a bit about Luke's backstory on why he decided to become a hermit on the planet Ahch-To. Speaking about this turn of events to EW, Mark Hamill elaborated on Luke's choice of finding the first Jedi Temple, revealing that it was his belief that Kylo Ren was in fact the Chosen One, a phrase we first heard in the prequels. Luke made a huge mistake in the thinking that his nephew was the Chosen One, so he invested everything he had in Kylo, much like Obi-Wan did with my character, Hamill says, and he is betrayed with tragic consequences. Luke feels responsible for that. That's the primary obstacle he has to rejoining the world and his place in the Jedi hierarchy, you know? It's that guilt, that feeling that it's his fault that he didn't detect the darkness in him until it was too late. Mark, what are your thoughts on Hamill's comments about Luke in The Last Jedi?
Well, it makes me feel just so bad for Luke because he left on top, man. When he left at Return of the Jedi, at the end of that, everybody's happy. We're all celebrating. We got this huge win, and life doesn't end up happily ever after. That's certainly not going to be the case for Luke. I mean, Schnepp, when you hear these comments, it seems like Mark Hamill really is torn as far as Luke Skywalker and what his role now in the Jedi hierarchy is, because he had everything going so smoothly, and then we get a story like this that might mirror some of the events of the classic trilogy where you have somebody who you thought was the Chosen One going down the dark path. My big question when I hear these comments is, how is Luke not powerful enough to stop somebody like Kylo Ren from doing that, from getting to that point? Because Luke, by all accounts, is one of the most, if not the most badass Jedis in the galaxy at that point. How could this possibly have come to pass?
Well, I mean, you just have to look at the lineage of the Skywalker family and look at his dad, who's Darth Vader. I mean, the Skywalkers have always been like riding that line between the Jedi and the Sith, and the balance of the Force and all these kinds of mythical things are always related to their family bloodline. So I think he might have had a little hubris, like, oh, the Chosen One is my sister's son. And instead of really maybe looking through all the other younglings or whoever else, little kids who possibly could have taken on that mantle, he might have pushed Kylo too soon, too fast. I mean, I think a lot of those things will be revealed in not only this movie, but the last film. So, I mean, it's kind of exciting to hear that Luke is not a perfect person. And in fact, he's very fallible and hiding because he feels like he failed not only himself, but the galaxy. So it puts a lot of weight on it, which is great to hear.
Yeah, Clarke, I mean, you can certainly read these comments and think that Luke is just an overzealous personal trainer when it comes to the Jedi, or you could think that there might be something more sinister going on than even Kylo Ren was aware of at the time, where you have a darker force pulling the strings behind the scenes that Luke Skywalker was even unaware of, whether that's Snoke or whether that's somebody else entirely. What sort of credibility do you give to the theory that Luke just failed this guy, or do you think that there was more at play here?
There has to be more at play. And one of the comments that was in this article was from Rian Johnson, and I loved what he said when he said, look, Luke is on this island for a reason. This is where we started when we were writing this script. Luke is not a coward, and yet he's so scared that he has retreated to this island, even though he knows his friends are in trouble. He knows that all of this stuff is going on, and yet he's still pulled so far back. He must have seen something or know something that we can't can't possibly have any indication of knowing what that is. Or maybe, I'm sure you guys out there will have some theories. But I think that that's actually really compelling, and I love the idea that, you know, when the cliffhanger happened in Force Awakens, it kind of was like, oh, you could look at Luke's story and maybe assume that something. It wasn't that. It was easy to jump to conclusions that it's like, oh, he's on this island for whatever reason. But I love that they're going deeper with it. I think that that's the most important thing.
Yeah, I mean, Perri, it's easy to think about Luke before he got his Jedi badge at the end of Return of the Jedi and think, well, he's had misgivings before. Even when he's in the ship on the way to the forest moon of Endor, he's thinking, wait, I endangered the mission. I shouldn't have come, and he has regrets about that, and he eventually overcomes that. Here, this is a lot to be regretful about. So is that why he's on the island? Is he just stewing about his mistake?
I think that's part of it. And the quote that Clarke brought up, that's kind of the most exciting thing about how the story is being presented in the EW article. And it's what I think is going to make The Last Jedi work really well on its own, being a great step in Luke's character journey, just as its own little entity. But then that's also the perfect story to touch on everything that's happened to Luke in past films. I mean, that first quote where he said, Luke needs to have a reason to be there. And I feel like that's something that a lot of sequels overlook, not addressing something like that, because it would be really simple to just, you know, okay, now he's training Rey and we're just going to go on. But no, he needs a reason to be there. That's a big deal to completely remove yourself, not just from a galaxy that depends on you, but from your family, and being able to sense that they're in trouble. That's a big, big deal. And then with what Hamill says after, where he says how he feels that extreme regret for something that he's responsible for that caused so much damage. So it's interesting to see how Johnson almost spun it in a positive way by explaining that Luke is there because he knows that's the right place for him to be to serve a purpose. And then you jump into Hamill's quote and it's like, oh, he's in hiding because he's not ready to come to terms for what he did.
That's right, Perri. Because you're chomping at the bit to talk more Star Wars, I'm going to give you some other stories that we got nuggets of yesterday, including the fact that Rian Johnson said we're going to learn as much about Snoke as we need to. Mm-hmm. So it does appear there's still going to be a lot of mystery surrounding him. He compared him to how we know the Emperor in the classic trilogy. Is that you really just see the Emperor through Luke's eyes, and then once the prequels came out, then you got this full-fledged character. You also have his really cool Praetorian Guards. You also have the tidbit that the casino planet is going to be a lot like what we expected. It's going to be your Morongo, your Vegas, and then you have these nun-like creatures that are hanging out on the island. They live there with Luke, and they don't necessarily like him. Why wouldn't you like Luke? He seems to keep to himself.
I was sure you were going to lead with porgs, but you kind of failed me, but it's okay. I mean,
Yeah,
Snoke's kind of important, too. The Snoke stuff is great as well, and I think his example of using a Wikipedia page to picture it all will make it make sense to everyone, because that is the problem with a lot of movies that explain away their villains, is it can't read like that, because then you're not in the shoes of your protagonist, and that's a really smart way to make the Emperor evolve over the original trilogy, is that you saw him from Luke's eyes. You started to learn as Luke learned. And the same thing should be true of Snoke. Otherwise, how could it be exciting at all? And the threat would be gone. So I'm kind of happy to hear that. There was also that little bit where he dismissed that rumor that Snoke was going to be a puppet, which it's pretty appropriate. Even though I'm a big fan of practical effects, when you look at the Snoke we got in The Force Awakens and you try to imagine how that would transition into a puppet, something didn't really seem all that right. The guards are cool looking. The guards are going to take some getting used to for me, because I looked at the picture of the guards first, and then I read what Rian Johnson had to say about them, and I was thinking, like, okay, that makes sense. That's kind of cool. I get how you're comparing them to the Emperor's guards and why they need to look like this, but something about them doesn't quite feel Star Wars to me yet. But, you know, it is one picture. They're cool looking. I don't see them fitting in that world, but then again, I see one picture of them. I don't see anything around them, so once I see them in the future, might warm up to them a bit.
Schnepp, if I take away the curiosity surrounding Luke and the Chosen One and what went down between him and his nephew, what sort of tidbit from the Entertainment Weekly article and the descriptions we got do you find the most fascinating?
Definitely not the porgs or the weird nun-like fish creatures.
Yeah.
That's boring to me. But the Praetorian Guards look cool. They're very samurai-ish, and to me, I was the opposite of Perri. I was like, wow, I can't wait to see those guys in action, and I kind of like to see new designs. And Star Wars is always breaking form. Like, if you go back to the Phantom Menace, I had those giant chrome ships that had nothing of the look of the original trilogy. It's just like, oh, we're in a different time. So I like to see that time is advanced. We're another 30 or 40 years into the future of this other fake world that doesn't exist. So I'm cool with seeing these weird red dudes. Hopefully they fight Luke. Who knows what's going to happen with them? I did like the little Porg creature with Chewbacca, but that's just to sell plush toys. We know that, and I'm probably going to buy one. So, the fish creatures can go to hell.
I like how angry you're going to be at Target in September when you're buying a Porg against your own will, against your better judgment.
Full anger, 6 of them. Get away from me, they're mine! Yeah.
Clarke, are you thinking Porgs? Are you thinking Island Nuns? Are you thinking Canto Bight? Where's your head at?
I'm thinking I am completely out of my element at this point. I have no idea what any of you guys are talking about. That's not true. I kid. But look, I am really on board with this new trilogy overall, really and truly. And I've been excited for Last Jedi basically since Force Awakens ended, because I think that was a great restart of the new trilogy, meaning Force Awakens. And now I'm ready to dive in. Now I want to get into the nitty gritty. Now, and I'm happy to meet all the new creatures and go to all the new planets. But really, I'm more interested in the characters. I'm very interested not only in Luke and Rey, but in Poe and in John Boyega's character and etc. And Leia. That's the thing that really I want to buy a Leia plush toy. I want to have like 3 Princess Leias just running around with me, because I want to see General Leia in action. So I'm super excited.
I'm just so fascinated by the nun-like creatures. Why don't they like Luke? What did he do? He lives there. He hangs out in caves. He's probably talking to dead Muppets. What is your problem with Luke? I don't get it. Why would they have to say that they don't necessarily like him unless that is an actual source of comedy in The Last Jedi? I know we're expecting this very dark movie. It's also going to be kid-friendly. Maybe there's some fun interaction. Maybe that's how Luke starts to open up. One of them walks by and he tells Rey, he's like, oh, yeah, they don't like me at all.
Kicks one down that mountain.
He's gone to the dark side.
As long as he doesn't kick a Porg.
That's what, just don't. There's no Porg abusing in The Last Jedi. Thank goodness. All right, let's move on to our next story, which involves Venom.
According to Variety, Riz Ahmed is in early talks to join Tom Hardy in Sony's Venom movie. Ruben Fleischer is directing the spin-off of the Spider-Man franchise, with details about Ahmed's character currently unknown, though sources for Variety say he'll be playing a popular Marvel comic character in the film. Speculation has already begun to swirl around the Rogue One actress casting, with many suggesting the role could be that of Carnage, which THR previously revealed would be the antagonist of the movie. However, THR reporter Boris Kitt tweeted soon after the news broke that Ahmed is not playing Carnage, though his sources said he was up for the part before script changes. No other details have been revealed at this time. Schnepp, thoughts on Riz Ahmed joining the Venom movie, and do you think it could be for the role of Carnage?
Well, when they recently announced they're doing that Lex Luthor movie that has nothing to do with Superman, I was so excited about that too. But as far as this casting news, I think he's probably going to be playing Chameleon or some other character, and Matt Smith is probably gunning for the role of Carnage. That makes more sense to me as casting wise, as far as the characters based on the comics that they're not basing any of this on because Spider-Man's on it. So I don't really know what to make of this Venom film. It's just called Venom. I love Tom Hardy. I'll probably go see it.
I mean, you might be buying that along with Porgs. I think that, Clarke, when you look at the casting of Riz Ahmed, whatever role he has, I think that it's going to be a credit to the movie Venom. It led some star power, and he was really good in small movies and in a huge movie, Rogue One. So what do you think about the involvement of Riz Ahmed? Who do you think he might be playing?
I think it's great. I mean, I think it's really good. We were talking before the show, and we were talking about Rogue One. Okay, but then I was just going through his credits and remembered that he was a Nightcrawler, which I loved him in, and I love that movie. So I think whatever, look, Sony has an uphill battle with this, I feel, because as Schnepp very eloquently pointed out, this is confusing. I mean, all of this is confusing. How are you going to do this story without Spider-Man? But as Schnepp also said, Tom Hardy is very interesting. And so Riz Ahmed is a great addition, but I also was reading in these reports that Pedro Pascal was being considered for whatever role he was up for. And I love Pedro Pascal. So whichever direction they go with casting, it sounds like they're going to fill a very important role with a very compelling, exciting actor. As far as if he's playing Carnage or not, I can't tell you. I mean, when it comes to the nitty-gritty of what this movie could potentially be, I wonder if Sony even knows. Like, the fact that these reports are like, no, well, originally he read for Carnage, but now they switched his character again, and it's just like, yikes. I don't know. It's so convoluted that I hope it's not a disaster from the beginning, but as far as Riz Ahmed goes, thumbs up.
Yeah, Perri, we've seen him take on complex roles in the past, like Clarke said, Nightcrawler, even in Rogue One, where there's a lot of sides to that character. It's not necessarily just a straight hero hero. It's somebody who has some anti-hero stuff in them. And then with Carnage, as you know, according to the Hollywood Reporter, that's going to be the straight antagonist in this movie. Do you think that'd be a good fit for Riz Ahmed if it comes to pass?
I think it would be good. Really, everything that I've seen Riz Ahmed in, I've liked him no matter what. And if you haven't seen one of his first films, Four Lions, that was just a random movie that came to mind while I was prepping for the show today. God, go check out Four Lions. He is so good in it too. But in terms of his casting, I'm afraid to get too carried away with the Carnage idea just because we have so many conflicting reports out there right now. I did catch the one that said things are changing, which is why he might not be up for the role of Carnage and something else, or these guys might be up for something else. I don't really know what to make of it right now, but it does make sense to me if the Venom movie had a Carnage villain, because really that's kind of the only way to make Venom sort of an anti-hero where he could be the lead and Carnage could be that much worse. But, you know, we're looking at films where there's multiple sides to Riz Ahmed's character. And then based on my limited knowledge of Carnage, I mean, you could probably speak to this more, Schnepp, he's just like pure evil through and through, just like one of the most terrible people out there. It might be interesting to see him like sink that low into a character. I'm sure he could do a lot with it. I just don't know if that's the path they're taking at all.
Yeah, for the layperson, I think Carnage is kind of like the pink ooze from Ghostbusters 2, where it's just a lot of evil and hate that gets on you and you don't want anything to deal with it. Schnepp, I mean, me, Clarke, and Perri, we're not really sure what to make of this Venom movie. You seem like you've made up your mind that this is just a kind of a doomed mission, so to speak. Is there any way to rectify it in your eyes?
I'm not going to say it's a doomed mission. I just, you know, I find that it's I'm going to see it. It's a rated R, you know, superhero film with Tom Hardy as this character called Venom. Has nothing to do with Spider-Man. Very weird to me. Still kind of, maybe he's going to look like the Venom character. I think it's a missed opportunity because, like, after they already ruined the character in the Spider-Man 3 film with Topher Grace, it was just another missed opportunity. So anybody who actually read the comics would have been like, why didn't they just follow the comics? It's like, I mean, it's a roadmap made very simple for when you're making a comic book movie adaptation. Wonder what? Well, let's just start from scratch. Idiots. You know, that's what I mean. It's like there's a whole bunch of comic books out there. Just pick like what Marvel, the MCU does great with Kevin Feige as a producer. He takes the best parts of all the different stories and weaves those together into a great movie. I'm always shocked and amazed that other studios can't simply take that simple approach. Why don't we take all the best parts of these different storylines, weave them together into a cool 2-hour film? I mean, it seems like it's not rocket science.
Can I ask a question real fast? When I read that Carnage could potentially be the antagonist of a movie where the villain is in it, meaning a Venom is in it also.
Right.
Like, does that make sense to you guys?
It does in a Suicide Squad kind of way where you have bad guys who have to go up against an even worse bad guy. And I think that the way the Venom movie works, even if Spider-Man isn't in this movie at all, is that you're setting up future films where you could have a Spider-Man Venom showdown. You know, and I think that sometimes people try to adopt the Marvel model too much, where the Amazing Spider-Man 2, I enjoyed some of it, but you also have all these villains that they're just trying to cram in there. And it doesn't work when it gets too crowded. Maybe this is their way of making space, but it also could just be, if you're a pessimist, it's just their way of making a buck because Spider-Man is huge right now, and you say Venom and Tom Hardy, and we all are going to be lining up to go see that movie.
I'm not full-blown pessimist with this yet, and I think the R rating is what's getting me most excited about this, but I think I just have this on the brain because I'm busy reading Inferno Squad right now, and I'm having a little bit of a tough time getting into it because it is just, there's a reason why we don't have very many films with pure villains as the lead character. It is very difficult to get viewers to jump into a story and engage and care about characters when they're pure evil. So if anything, that's the roadblock I see. It's like, do you make Venom a straightforward villain? Because I want to see them take the ballsy move and try to make that work, but I know it's next to impossible unless you pair him with someone like, then I think Silence of the Lambs, maybe you get some access through that kind of way, but it's really freaking difficult, and that's as if they didn't have enough other things working against them with this.
Here's my thoughts about that. He's not going to be a pure villain. He's like going to be Snake Plissken. That's who Tom Hardy is going to be playing. Venom is Snake Plissken. He's an anti-hero that you're going to get behind because he's a badass, but he's cool. You know, he's not like, I'm Mr. Goody Two-Shoes. He does things his way. That's the approach to make Venom anti-hero, but someone that, you know, who has to fight like a worse villain and things like that. I guarantee you that Peter Parker and Tom Holland is going to show up. because Sony and Marvel have their deal where Spider-Man is in the MCU. They also have their standalone films. There's absolutely no way at all that Spider-Man is not going to be a part of the Venom film and the Black and the Silver film and the Mysterio these crossovers and all this other weird stuff that they're trying to do. If they don't weave Spider-Man in, it's a fail. And there's no way they're not going to do that. They're just not announcing it yet. But I guarantee you that Spider-Man is going to be in the Venom film. He's not going to have a giant role, but Tom Holland and as Peter Parker is going to be in that movie. I guarantee it.
Yeah, it could just be like the Marvel Netflix movies where, like, in the background there's just like a framed headline and it says Iron Man saves Fairy, Spider-Man helps, and it's like, oh, we're in that universe.
They're not going to cheap out like that. He's going to be in the film. He is going to be in the film. It's not going to be a headline or some stuff like that.
All right, well, as of right now, the film is slated for release October 5th, 2018, so we got to wait over a year. However, guess what? There's movies coming out in theaters this weekend, and one of them has adorable animated squirrels.
The Nut Job 2 is coming out, or Nutty by Nature is coming out this week. Surly, voiced by Will Arnett, the squirrel, and his animal friends spring into action when the evil mayor of Oakton plans to bulldoze the park that they all live in. The Glass Castle is also coming out. A young girl comes of age in a dysfunctional family of nonconformist nomads with a mother who's an eccentric artist and an alcoholic father who would stir the children's imagination with hope as a distraction to their poverty.
That's a pretty impressive cast when you got Brie Larson, Woody Harrelson and company. I might check out The Glass House. I think that's one of those films that
Glass Castle.
The Glass Castle.
House is a lot of fun, though.
Glass Castle. The Glass House. Just don't throw stones if you live there. I'll check out the Glass movie this weekend. Look, I would rather go see the Annabelle Creation again. I had fun with that movie. It's not a great movie, but that's the movie that I'm thinking about this weekend. I'm most curious about that box office. Clarke, if I told you were not allowed to go see Annabelle Creation again, and I said you got to go see the Glass movie or the Squirrel movie, where are you going?
I picked the Glass movie because it has Woody Harrelson in it.
Okay.
Come on, of course. By the way, this is an easy joke, but it is also true. I didn't know there was a Nut Job 1. This is ridiculous.
Yeah, it sounds like a porn joke.
It really
it's like, look at
does.
my animated Nut Job movie. What?
I think
It's for kids. What? You're going to jail. The Nut Job. Are you serious? Now it's Nutty by Nature? Are you joking?
Yeah.
What society do we live in? I'm taking my kids to see the Nut Job 2, Nutty by Nature. You're nuts.
that's really good thing that movie's animated, because if the Nut Job is live action, that's a porn starring
Pathetic.
furries. That's what it is.
Pathetic universe.
So you're not
Emoji.
seeing-
Starring
Nut
furries.
Job.
Oh, no.
Are you going to the movies this
Garbage
weekend, Perri?
cinema.
Are you seeing anything other than Annabelle again?
I don't have to see anything because I already saw Annabelle and it amazes me how many people keep calling the Glass Castle Glass House. The first person that said it to me, I'm like, really? And really, every single person who has brought it up to me keeps saying Glass
Well,
House.
you hear about glass houses all the time. Rarely
Right.
do we hear about castles made out of glass.
Ice castles, you hear about that.
Special. There's a reason that you haven't heard of the Nut Job 1 because that movie opened to like $19 million. I think it made something like $120 worldwide, and I think it cost something like $45 to make. Why would you make another one of those? So I think that's going to come and go anyway. No one's going to pay any attention to that.
They said that at the Emoji movie. Look at that.
Well, and it didn't do too well.
It made like
It didn't do-
made more than $20.
Made more than 20.
Does that count for
It
that
should've
low
only made
bar?
20
It made more than
I
$20.
don't think you'll be seeing new emoji movies. I think you might see more Nut Job movies down the line, just because there's so many.
Nut Job
No
3.
way.
So many adults with so many weird fetishes out there. I
Glass
think you're going to get a
Castle is
couple
pretty
more.
good though.
Is it?
I mean, it's if you go on Rotten Tomatoes right now, the reviews are very split, and I think they're very split for a reason. And it's actually the reason why I admire the movie, and it's because, similar to the villain conversation we just had, these are really difficult characters to understand and get behind, like really understand why they live the way they live. And it just comes down to, in the end, whether or not that journey makes you accept them or you can't. And I think that's why it's very hit or miss. But this director is the one who directed Short Term 12, and I love Short Term 12. So I've had my eye on this for a while. I'm not disappointed. It's not as good as that, but I think he accomplished something really different and special with this.
All right, we got creepy dolls, silly squirrels, or a glass structure of some sort. And you might just want to stay home and watch the NFL preseason this weekend. All right, let's move on to buy or sell. This is a part of the show where Natasha's going to give us a premise. We say whether we buy it or sell it, and then we make a nut job joke.
We now know for certain that Blade Runner 2049 will follow its predecessor, Blade Runner, by giving the movie an R rating. Anticipation for the sci-fi sequel is especially high for fans of the original ever since Sicario and Arrival filmmaker Denis Villeneuve signed on to helm. The movie was officially given the rating yesterday for violence, some sexuality, nudity, and language. It stars Harrison Ford, who will reprise his role as Rick Deckard, Ryan Gosling as an LAPD officer in search of him, along with Jared Leto, Robin Wright, Bacard Ardee, Dave Bautista, and Mackenzie Davis. Blade Runner 2049 opens in theaters on October 6th. Clarke, buy or sell an R rating for Blade Runner 2049?
I buy it because I know this is a lifelong passion project for Denis Villeneuve, and I love the idea that there were basically not boundaries placed on the content. The idea that you can make an R-rated movie, we support that, we support you, go for it. I like that. So to me, that's a big buy.
Schnepp, this Blade Runner movie, tell me about it.
Wake up. It's time to die, Mark Ellis, because Mark still hasn't seen Blade Runner. Well, it's one of my favorite films of all time. So when I first heard they were making a sequel, I was kind of irked. I was like, this is a movie you don't make a sequel to. It's kind of, you get 2010 when you make a sequel to a movie that is not supposed to get a sequel to. So, but then when Denis Villeneuve got involved, I changed my mind, especially... I mean, to be honest, after San Diego Comic-Con, like going to that panel, I'd already heard and read some comments that he had said about it, but he was like, the reason I'm making this so no one else can fuck it up. I just like had so much respect for him because Blade Runner is also one of his favorite films. And to know how important the original film is to film lovers and to people who are true cineastes and people who love science fiction and adult science fiction and just basically thinking people, it's like, it's super important to be able to make science fiction on an adult level and not make a nut job 3 around the rim. What I'm trying to say is like an R-rated Blade Runner gives me back my faith in the cinematic universe that we live in right now, and not just a clogged group of horrible garbage films made out to just making popcorn. You know, it's like I want to be able to actually think about a movie when I come out and have an intelligent conversation. Hopefully that's what we're going to get with this film. I don't know if it's a good film or bad film yet, but everything I've seen about it has me really intrigued, and that they're unafraid. Like Alcon is not afraid to make an R-rated, very expensive, hopefully somewhat intellectual, but also I'm sure there's a lot of action involved. I'm sure it's not going to be boring, but something that is true to the original. So I cannot wait for this film.
Yeah, I mean, anytime a movie is rated R, whether it's going to be the first Blade Runner or the Nutjob 3 triple decker, I think that you have something that the content is so shocking that if you're under 17, you can't go see this movie. If that was the case for the first Blade Runner, which did come out in 1982, before you had the option of PG-13, then I would say the same should hold true, because anytime we've seen in franchises when you start out with R ratings, then you go down to PG-13, it doesn't work that well. I know a lot of time has passed and a lot of changes have gone by in the MPAA and the way that people view art as content for kids and whatnot, but Perri, it seems like the right area to go in. The first Blade Runner, did it need to be R-rated in your mind?
I can't think of anything super specific except maybe some of the sexual stuff that might make it need that R rating. But I guess I'm just happy to hear that it gets an R rating, because had it gotten the PG-13 rating, what would have initially crossed my mind is, oh, like, what if Denis Villeneuve made it one way and then they forced him to make it another way so they can make some money? Were you on the show where I finally said that I watched the final cut?
No.
And it changed everything. I listened to you, and I've never had that experience with a movie where I've seen extended editions and director's cuts where I'm like, oh, like, yeah, that was a better idea than that was. The final cut completely changes the experience. It gets you engaged and in that world right off the bat, whereas the original, the theatrical version, takes you out with a certain thing that they do. But it works so well, and now it's gotten me so hyped for this new Blade Runner movie, as though I wasn't more excited with Denis Villeneuve on it. As long as he gets to do whatever he wants to do, I think we're going to be in good shape with this movie. I'm really curious to see what winds up happening as we get closer to the release, because that release date, it's not just, you know, maybe a good money-making spot for them. That's kind of awards season time. And there's some pretty big festivals coming up, some festivals that do tend to do surprise screenings. So in the coming months, they might make announcements or make moves that could put Blade Runner 2049 in a position to actually get some Academy Award consideration.
Would it have killed your anticipation for Blade Runner 2049, even after seeing that panel, if it was indeed rated PG-13?
I don't think so.
Would that have bummed you out?
No, because, I mean, if you look at the original Blade Runner, with outside exceptions to maybe some of the extra violent death sequences and sex scenes. You could have trimmed a little bit of that out, and it would have been PG-13. In fact, I think it probably, you know, we live in such a pilgrim world. I don't know. Sometimes it's annoying to even talk about this.
You went from Puritans in the pre-show.
Yeah, well,
to
it's
pilgrims.
Puritans, pilgrims, call them what you want. You know, people are afraid to live.
Castles, houses,
Yeah,
it's
I
all
know.
over.
So-
What's the difference?
Yeah.
really?
So I mean, but yeah, it really could ride that line. The original Blade Runner 1982 could come out now, and with maybe 2 seconds cut out would be PG-13. So you know, if it was PG-13, would it upset me? I would be like, well, I guess they're trimming it down a little bit, and they don't want to take that risk. But I'm extra happy that it's rated R.
Yeah, we do live in a day and age when if your movie is rated R, it seems like that we give that the credibility to the studio, allowing the artist, the director, to have all the freedom they want. So we'll see how that pans out for Blade Runner 2049. What's our next story?
Deadline is reporting that Deadpool director Tim Miller has signed on to direct an adaptation of the 1984 sci-fi novel Neuromancer for Fox, with longtime X-Men producer Simon Kinberg on board to produce. While a writer has not been set for the movie, it will be based on the novel written by William Gibson and tells the story of Henry Dorset Case, a disgraced computer hacker living in Japan who was punished for stealing from his employer by being rendered unable to access the Matrix, a worldwide virtual reality network. But he's given a shot at getting back his access when he is hired to complete the ultimate hack of an artificial intelligence orbiting the Earth. A number of filmmakers have attempted a Neuromancer adaptation over the years, but now it looks as though Miller will be the one to see it to the finish line. A release date has not been set. Perri, buy or sell Neuromancer directed by Tim Miller?
I am going to buy it strictly because I think Tim Miller is a talented guy, and I think his talents would fit really well with this material. I'm not buying it because I think it's going to happen anytime soon, because as was stated in the description of the story, this movie is a long time coming. I think I've had Neuromancer on my iPad for like 4 or 5 years just because I covered one story and I'm like, oh, I should read this. And then it never happened and the book just sat there. This story isn't going to make me finally crack open the book and read it because I know he's got Terminator. I know that will likely come first. So this is probably not happening anytime soon. I'm taking it seriously enough, though, that he's developing it, and I think that's good for the project, but I don't think this necessarily means we're seeing it, so my book is just going to sit there.
Yeah, I'm going to go on a ledge. I'm going to buy this, that Tim Miller is going to direct Neuromancer at some point in the future. I mean, it's really cool that this book came out in 1984, and it has all these themes that are very, very relevant today. And Tim Miller is the director with the most clout yet who has been attached to direct this project. I think he can bring it to life. The Terminator thing is interesting because obviously if he's working with James Cameron on that, he's probably developing the story with James Cameron, and he's going to take the ball and run with it while Cameron does Avatar. Miller can go off and do a Terminator reboot. But I think Neuromancer is something that Tim Miller might want to do because it is original and it's not collaborating with somebody else where he just got off a project in making Deadpool 2 where he's like, that's not really my bag anymore. I'm not seeing eye to eye. I want something that I can explore more my creative freedom. Maybe Neuromancer's that opportunity, Clarke.
Maybe it is, and I'm glad that we're talking about him again because last year I was actually at a panel where he was talking, and you know it's easy to forget that Tim Miller only has one feature under his belt. Mm-hmm. However, he spent decades working in visual effects and I believe games, but in that world of visual effects and directing actors in mocap and green screen and all of these things. And so hearing that he's signed on to Terminator and hearing now that he's interested in Neuromancer, I think these make really good sense for his decades of experience as a director. Because, you know, I do think it's important, again, to remember that he has one feature under his belt. So I buy it.
Well, I've never been buying comic books with him, but somebody on this panel has. Jon Schnepp, did Tim Miller drop any sweaty hints of possible Neuromancer in his future?
Mark, if only you could see what I've seen with your eyes. Yeah, you know what? Tim Miller's awesome. I've gotten a chance to talk with him over the last few years. I interviewed him last year, did a comic book shopping with him. And yes, he told me about him doing Neuromancer. Of course, I couldn't say anything. It's called insider knowledge. But if I was doing a What Happened TV series and perhaps Neuromancer was, you know, one of those things that I was actually making an episode for with perhaps maybe one of the most recent directors, which you might be seeing in the near future. I was very happy to hear about someone who's such an incredible science fiction nut like Tim Miller. He's read so many science fiction books. He's got anybody I know beat. The guy is super, super ultra nerd. He looks badass with all these tattoos, and he is badass with all those tattoos, but he's also a super nerd and so much fun. I was over the moon to hear that he loved Neuromancer. William Gibson's Neuromancer is truly the granddaddy of science fiction films. It's what every other film has ripped off since The Matrix. I mean, it's literally what helped create the world of VR and cyberspace as we know it now. And to finally see it adapted by someone who actually knows the source material and loves the source material is a dream come true, because I know it's going to be honored. William Gibson is excited about it. Everyone involved inside this production is incredibly excited about it. So sometimes when you find out about stuff, you got to just sit on it and wait until that news drops. So I heard about the news yesterday. I was like, woohoo, it's finally out. You know, so I cannot wait. You're right. It's going to be a couple of years, but it's going to be worth the wait.
That's right. Well, there's a lot of stuff swirling in Jon Schnepp's head at all times, and you guys now have daily access to it thanks to our daily dose of heroes as well as TV Talk. TV Talk is going to be live later on today, followed by an all-new daily episode of Heroes. And we mentioned comic book shopping with Tim Miller. You actually got to go comic book shopping with another guy named Miller, and that's also pretty damn exciting.
Yeah, Frank Miller, the legend, the man, the myth, the creator and writer and artist of The Dark Knight Returns, Ronin, 300, Daredevil, the Elektra. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. So it was truly an honor to finally be able to hang out with him, talk with him about his career, and just talk comics. So that's the brand new comic book shopping. It just dropped. So
Cody, hit the button.
I'm standing with the legendary Frank Miller. That's right. You know him. If you don't, you're crazy. He's got Daredevil. He's got The Dark Knight Returns, Sin City.
I had a chance to do Batman, and I was 29 years old, and so I figured Batman's got to be older than me. From that sprung everything about the story.
Well, it's truly one of the greatest comic books ever written. What have you got coming up that you would like to talk about?
I've really got a Western I want to do. It's a Sin City.
Ooh. Let's talk about comics.
Okay. You know what's really jumping out at me is this one. This one looks fun. Wow, I didn't know about this.
You're a good salesman.
Yeah, good stuff.
Check out the Frank Miller episode of Comic Book Shopping up on Collider Video right now. Later on today, Jedi Council is going to be all new, and they're going to do a deep dive into all of the Last Jedi info, as well as a whole bunch of other Star Wars news stories. And don't forget, Jeremy Johnson's weekly show, Awesome Tacular, is available on the Go90 network, and you can check out the link to the latest vid in this description right here. Before we move on to Mailbag, I want to remind you guys at the end of this show, we're going to save some time for your live Twitter questions. Go ahead and start tweeting us right now. Wendy Lee Zaney is our beloved gatekeeper at Collider Video. In the meantime, Natasha, what's in the mailbox today?
Well, Ninja Transformers writes,
Wow.
you guys have often mentioned how Marvel and DC have a symbiotic relationship with one another and how each brand wants the other to succeed. So, with The Dark Tower failing this weekend at the box office and not getting good reviews from critics and audiences, how much is it going to negatively affect fellow Stephen King film It? Thanks for taking my question and have a great day.
Ninja Transformers, I think your question is as good as your name, because look, if it was coming out 2 weeks after The Dark Tower, I think that is a valid concern. That, oh, no, now the Stephen King property and people don't have an appetite for The Dark Tower. It got crushed. What's going to happen with it? The difference here is that there's enough space, even if it's just a month, to let everybody get The Dark Tower and, more importantly, the critics and the audience reviews of The Dark Tower out of their mouths and welcome in It. The other thing that It has in its corner, which is huge, is a great marketing campaign so far. Those trailers have been tremendously horrifying, a lot of fun. It's breaking records on YouTube for most watched trailer in a 24-hour period. So I think It has so much going for it, and I don't think the name Stephen King is going to be a detriment just because the Dark Tower film did not do as well as expected. Clarke, how do you see it?
I agree, and also I think that it's important to remember that audiences have been inoculated to the Stephen King name attached to movies and TV series for decades.
Right.
And so I don't think anybody necessarily looks and goes, oh, Stephen King, oh, like, I think audiences pretty much understand that they're separate entities. The Mist TV show came and went this summer, and nobody really, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's not going to have an effect on something like It or et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, I think It is going to crush at the box office, and I think fans are going to love it. And, it's unfortunate that The Dark Tower was, just lackluster. But I don't think that the Stephen King name is going to be tarnished.
Yeah, if I can have a jaded view of both these movies, if I see an ad for The Dark Tower, I'm like, okay, well, it's got some famous people. It's got McConaughey in a Lincoln commercial. What the hell is this? Is this even a horror movie? I know it's based on Stephen King material. When you see a trailer for it, it's a scary clown, man, and it's terrorizing kids, and that's a really horrifying premise. You want to go see that movie to get some frights.
Had the studio announced Dark Tower and said it's going to be in a cinematic universe with it, then this would be a different conversation.
Right.
I don't think one will affect the other in the least. Okay, maybe if you're looking at this size of the movie-going audience, I think maybe like that amount of people will be like, oh, like maybe Stephen King adaptations are not a good idea. That is not going to change anything. I agree with Clarke. It is going to blow the box office away in September. I think it's going to be a huge hit. I'm so excited to see it. The Marvel-DC relationship is just a completely different thing where they're playing off each other because it's a genre and it is a thing that they're both doing with superhero cinematic universes. So if one starts to stumble and tires the audience out, it could affect the other one positively or negatively. It could drive people that way, or it could make people think, oh, I don't want any of this, so screw them too. It's two completely different relationships. I think that it is going to cruise along just fine in the fall.
Jon Schnepp, is this question totally ridiculous, or did Ninja Transformers just blow your mind?
Mark, there's a part of me in you. Another quote.
Is that from the Nut Job 2?
Nut Job 3.
Yeah, I was
currently
gonna say,
ready.
yeah, the Nut Job 3.
Your Nut Job jokes have been on point
Yeah.
all day today.
All right, well, I'm not going to ruin it by saying another one. So
Leave him one more.
this has no correlation with DC Marvel at all. I mean, it's like it would be like saying, well, if 40 horror movies all came out and they sucked, would the 41st horror movie make less money? Well, if it sucked. So it's sort of like, I kind of think that, you know, with our films like Get Out and Don't Breathe, a whole bunch of these amazing horror films that you like, but people love to go to see horror films to get scared and freaked out. And it is scaring and freaking people out. Just the trailers alone with that little slideshow thing. I was like, oh my God. Or like a weird clown running at you from the water, like, get me out of here. I mean, look at Makuga, like peeing in his pants. He can't even handle like a clown in a corner. It's not even real. Imagine what's going to happen when he sees this movie. I mean, it might be trauma centers. You're going to have, there's going to be people fainting and freaking out in the theater. This is like Exorcist level kind of stuff because people are afraid of clowns. I mean, I know at least 8 people that are horribly, Clarke's one of them, horribly afraid of clowns.
We have another one.
Yeah, I mean, there's people who are freaked out, like Amy Rose. There's so many people that are just, don't show me that clown. You mean this clown? They're freaking out. And it's just a clown. They're supposed to be there to make you happy. And like, no, and crying and weirdness. Now you got an evil, freaky clown. Like this clown is freaky and scary. Has nothing to do with a gunslinger and some dudes like, I just think they ruined the character of Randall Flagg, who's one of my favorite characters from The Stand. Anybody who's ever read any Stephen King understands how cool the character is. And then you just see a simplified kind of like, I haven't even seen The Dark Tower yet because the trailers pissed me off so much. And then hearing everyone else trash it was like, I can just wait. It's a bummer to me. So the sooner it's out of the theaters and a forgotten memory, the better. And if they do a series, a TV series, at least that's the way they should have done it. It needs so much more time to devote to the characters. I mean, sometimes you can't get a great movie in 90 minutes. So with it, a lot of people don't know it's part 1 of 2 parts. I mean, it's a 2-part film. You're seeing the first part of the story in this movie, and you'll see a second one because I agree with you, Clarke. It's going to be a box office smash.
All right. Wendy, I'm glad to know I'm not the only one afraid of clowns here on the panel. Thanks for being there for me, you and Clarke together. I won't even go to McDonald's. I won't even go to Wendy's because the Wendy logo has clown-like tendencies. I don't trust it.
She just has red hair. She doesn't look
yeah,
I don't want to associate my name with clowns.
Nah, there's a smile she has that's a little Annabelle-ish.
No, I will never eat at Wendy's ever again.
Well, then let's just go to Burger King. No, that's got a creepy mascot too. We're screwed with Fat Carl's Jr. That's where we're going. Let us wrap. All right, let's go a couple quick Twitter questions here.
All right, this one comes from Chris, who writes, in honor of Psycho's birthday, who's your favorite creepy movie mom?
Oh, favorite creepy movie mom.
Great question.
Yeah, I'm gonna. It's hard for me to say anything other than Carrie.
Ooh.
The original.
That's so good.
Carrie. I mean, was it Piper
Piper
Laurie?
Laurie.
Yeah, she's just so
Oscar
like
nomination.
because you put yourself in those shoes and it's like, what if this was my mother? You know, I mean, at least Norman Bates' mom is dead. By the time we meet her, she's dead. So she's not like she's not telling it. It came out in 1961. Turn it off, Cody. Like Norman Bates. Anytime he wants, he can just snap out of it and be like, oh, I'm not under the spell anymore.
No
but
wire
Perri,
hangers.
Yeah.
There's one, Joan Crawford.
Yeah,
That's a
Creepy
great
mother.
one. Yeah. Perri, who you got?
Well, that's immediately where my mind went, was Carrie. But just to throw out another example that I think was kind of overlooked, you ever see the Mother's Day remake? That's actually pretty damn good, and that movie is well worth a watch.
Mother's Day?
Yeah.
Not the Gary Marshall picture? Julia Roberts,
Oh, God.
Jennifer Aniston?
That is also
There's some bad moms in that
horrific movie. Yeah. That's
Here's another mom, Mother from Alien. The ship's computer named Mother.
Oh, yeah.
Really out to screw the human
And don't
beings.
forget about Mother!
That's right.
Mother! And Black Swan, that's pretty bad mom, too.
Oh, yeah.
Pretty bad.
That's a good call.
Kind of like football coach mommy, like just pushing her daughter too hard. Let your kids earn their trophies. All right, one
My
more
mother?
question.
I'll tell you about my mother. There we go. That's another one.
All right, this one comes from CERN Comic, who writes, "Hello, Collider crew. Is there any chance of a live-action adaptation of Rick and Morty in the near future?"
Rick and Morty is exploding right now. It's a very funny TV series, and it's hugely popular. Live action, it's tough to make the transition from an animated cartoon that is meant for laughs to live action. Now, it has happened before with box office success. If you look at the Flintstones, you look at the Scooby-Doo movies, it's happened. But I don't think for the Rick and Morty audience, Flintstones and Scooby-Doo, those TV shows could be entertaining for all. The movies were primarily aimed towards kids. That's not going to be the audience necessarily for Rick and Morty, so I don't see that happening in a live-action realm. Now, Rick and Morty feature-length, flick in theaters along the lines of what The Simpsons did, that could be a possibility.
Or South Park.
Sure.
Never say never, but if they do announce a live-action adaptation, maybe I'll actually watch some.
What? You haven't
I've
watched
never
any
seen,
of it?
And Dennis talks about it all the time.
Wow. Well, you know what? I was a
he's
latecomer
giving me the finger
to
wag right now.
Rick and Morty as well, because super busy, and then I chain watched them, and they're so funny. I mean, it's literally you're gonna when you finally do watch, you're gonna be like, why didn't I watch it immediately? I've been missing out on all the fun. But you know what? That's the greatest thing. If you haven't watched Rick and Morty, you could just watch so many of them. They're all on Hulu right now. You could just watch all of them. So
We're so jealous of Perri all of a sudden because she gets to watch Rick and Morty.
Yeah, fresh
From Virgin Eyes.
I'll sneak a couple episodes in with all the Star Trek episodes that I still have to watch.
But how they could do a Rick and Morty movie, they could do it animated, but because they're always going and jumping through time portals, they could jump just like The Simpsons into a live-action Rick and Morty and do a 5-minute live-action Rick and Morty. They could even do that as an episode. They might. You never know.
We'll have to wait on that, and you're going to have to wait one day for another Collider Movie Talk. Thank you guys for joining us here today. Thanks to the hardworking staff right behind the cameras, as well as the panelists up here with me. Schnepp, where can everybody find you?
Nothing is worse than having an itch that you can't scratch. You can find me on Heroes and comic book shopping daily. Check it out. It's all on YouTube. I'm on Twitter and Instagram, just at Jon Schnepp.
She lives in a glass castle with her cat Dewey. Her name is Perri Nemiroff.
That sounds like a great title for a children's book.
Yeah.
I would love that.
Dewey's Glass Castle.
That's wonderful. Yeah. There is a Dewey cat book. It's like
really?
It's yeah.
Based on
someone
your
bought
kitten?
it for me. I wish. It looks like a completely different cat. Anyway, I'm on Twitter and Instagram at PNMRuff. Also, watch out for Collider Behind the Scenes this Saturday. It is all about our trip to Vegas for the Star Trek convention. Don't miss it. Porgs.
Perri has a cat named Dewey, and Clarke Wolfe has a time-traveling dog named Rufus.
And Neil, I want to party with you. You guys.
You've been waiting all show to say that, haven't you?
I sure have. You can find me at Clarke Wolfe, Clarke with an E, Wolf with an E. And don't forget to follow me on Stardust if you haven't downloaded the app yet. Do it. It's free. I'm putting so many reviews up. And it's Annabelle week, so the Conjuring 2 review is coming today.
The Conjuring 2 review coming today. Natasha Martinez, where can the kids find you?
You guys can find me on Twitter and Instagram at NatashaLexis_.
And last but not least, Wendy Lee Zaney.
On YouTube at the Movie Couple channel, and on Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat at Wendy Lee Zaney.
I am merely Mark Ellis. You guys can follow me on Twitter at Mark Ellis Live. Thanks to all the fans who came to see me at the Laugh Factory in Hollywood last night. This weekend, I'll be at the world-famous Comedy Store right down the street. Dennis is going to be hosting tomorrow, as he does every Friday. And until then, ba-ba-da-ba-ba-ba-da-da.
Hey guys, if you like this video, click the thumbs up button. Also, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. It'll help you stay up to date with everything we've got going on here at Collider.